Right, we're back with green, and this is where we need to be a little bit more careful, because we want to try and maintain this sharp edge camo. So we want to come in, and again we want to draw that line in, and you'll see it instantly. Drawing a sharper line, because it's a darker paint. So if you control your flow, you will gain a nice, slightly feathered, but more hard edge camo look. We want to come in and do the same as we did before, mottle the panels in. And if you want to, what we want to do as well is, if we want to paint a little bit quicker, is we can just work on areas like we're doing here, and then once we've mottled that area in, we can just fill it in with the airbrush, and that'll be a quicker finish. And this is how I usually work. So you just start laying in over that mottled area, working within the demarcation lines that you've painted on, pulling back a little bit. You need to be careful with your airflow and paint flow that you don't flood the surface. Because painting this way, you tend to be a bit closer in, and the paint, if you're not careful, will come out quite fast and will flood the area, and then you'll end up getting too much overspray. So there's the first part in, and you can see straight away we've got a nice feathered edge but sharp edge camo, and you can come back in as many times as you like and change the profile of the demarcation line. And that's one thing I've found with these Gaahleri airbrushes, is they're really controllable, and I have really been able to get a decent freehand camo pattern sprayed. So we'll start on this side of the tail. It's a little difficult to see just purely for the angle of the camera and my airbrush. Same thing, we just start that initial pass, and then we want to there we go, we've got that initial pass in. We've got the demarcation painted in. We want to be careful because we've got some brown in here on the inner surface, so I'm going to try and just tight as we can. We'll just spray very fine edge into there, trying to avoid overspray up onto the brown. And then we'll do a little bit of mottling. And then we'll do some fill work. There we go. Right. I'm going to finish the tail section and this fuselage section, and I'll come back and we'll show you how we do these bigger sections on the wing. Right, so we've got the tail done. I filled in this little mistake here on the end, and we're going to work this way over the fuselage. Now, one thing I do when I can is always get your hands supported. So obviously I'm right-handed. I lay down my left hand and cup my wrist here like this, and then use that to support my right hand with the airbrush, and that just gives me a hell of a lot more control. So you can get a repeatable line. Then you colour it in like this. You go from one end to the other. You can go straight back over the line you've done. Okay, and you're making it a little bit broader each time, working towards the inside of the panel, and then that gives you your boundary to spray into. So we're happy we've got that. We want to do a bit of mottling. Now if we were using a lighter grey colour, so XF19 or the like, or even white, you can get some really nice Mr. Surface 1500 white primers. Then you would get the mottling showing through a lot more. And it is a technique that armor modelers use, where they actually use a white primer, and then they get a lot of their mottling and shading done just using the one coat of paint. And obviously the more times you layer it up, the darker it gets, so they can get the total variation without actually using too much paint. I tend to like the darker primers. It suits my style of painting. You can see you've got the mottling done, and then we want to fill in the block. And bear in mind this is only a 0.2 airbrush, so we can control how much paint we're getting out, as long as we've got a nice finish that we're happy with. And then we're going to move on to the wing, and this is where it starts getting a little complicated. We've got the brown colour going down to the lower fuselage. This is green here, this is green here, so we want to avoid getting overspray onto the brown, but we also need to paint the demarcation line on the engine nacelle. Now typically I probably start on the wing, and we'll get this fuselage to wing joint done first, get that painted in, and then we'll start here. So working towards where we want that demarcation line. Bit of mottling in there. And this is the beauty of doing mottling and freehand camo. You can finish an area quite quickly to a good standard. There we go, get that leading edge painted in, get it out of the way, and then we want to follow this cam line down the top of the engine nacelle. So pick up where we left off, and we'll start drawing it in. And if we want to put a bit more of a wave in it, I think it's too bland, too straight, because we've got a darker colour, we can do that. We can just go in there, put a little kink in the line, and then spray in towards the centre of the panel. And then gently flow in the block colour. So pull back a little bit and increase the flow of paint, just being careful and mindful to paint away from other surfaces we don't want paint on. Not a travesty, if we get on, we can always come back and touch it in, but we want to try and avoid just having to double up our work too much. And as you're moving it around, getting different light angles on, we might see areas that we're not happy with. We've already painted, so we can just go back and touch them in. Blend in those demarcation lines. Right, I'm going to have to move away from the camera for 2 seconds to paint in this line here. But I'll do that, and I'll probably just do the inner side here. I'll tell you what, I'll try, yeah. I'll paint this off camera because I need more room to get to it. It's quite tight, and it's the same with this side. and if I can, then we'll paint this on camera. So back in a moment. We're back. So we've got this camo line painted here. We've got an engine nacelle done there, and I've done the lower camo line on this engine nacelle. So we're going to focus on this last part of the wing before we go back and complete the fuselage. So same as before, we'll support our hand, and we'll just get in there and we'll start laying in that camo pattern, following roughly where we started off. Make sure we get the front of the engine nacelles. Always try and orientate the aircraft that it helps you with how you hold your hand. You see, like I said, you can alter the camo pattern to suit your taste. I've always been one to use as a guide. I've never stressed if I haven't got it perfect, and I have made some howlers and before mixing the colours up and getting a completely opposite camouflage pattern. So I admire folk that do an exact copy. I use it as an inspiration for myself, just to make the model my way, because after all it's my model, so however I want it is however I want it. And everyone else should be the same. And you will hear that from a lot of modelers, that so long as you're happy with it and you're pushing your skills to develop further to a point that you're satisfied with, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, because it's your model, it's your hobby, it's your relaxation, your enjoyment. And there's nobody in this world who's got a right to come and say that you're doing it wrong, just because they don't particularly care for how you do things. So long as you're happy doing them and you're developing your skills and you get a sense of achievement out of what you do, just carry on doing it. Reach out to the community if you want to learn a new skill. Watch YouTube videos. You know, there's plenty of guys out there, really good modelers, far better than me, putting YouTube videos out. Watch and learn from them. But just keep modeling, keep pushing your skill set, keep having fun. So, got the first outlines done. With these bigger areas you can pull back a little bit more. Get that paint coverage in a bit quicker. Like I said, don't worry too much if you make a small mistake. You can always come back in and fix it. Especially here at the front of the wings, we're using the airflow and the shape of the model to our advantage. So we know the air is going away from the underside camo colours and away from the other colours we don't want to get overspray on. And then at the last minute we'll come in here and we'll make sure we get the leading edge done properly, and we'll join the dots on this engine nacelle here. just when you need to, maneuver the model just to make sure you don't get any overspray on the sky, purely because that's the lightest colour, so it will be the one that you'll have to work hard to get the mistake covered over. Right, we have got the last centre section to do, and then we've laid down the first colour, and we can think about unmasking and seeing how we've got on. So again, get in here, pick a starting point and just go for it. One main thing to think of when you're doing it is making sure that transition between the wing surface and the fuselage, the paint lines match up, otherwise it might look a little peculiar. Just as you go maneuver, remember to move the model so you've got a view and a position and to lay down the camo that you're comfortable with, that you're going to get your best results. Turn the model around, and as you're doing it, if you see an area of paint you need to touch up, get in and do it. Don't wait, you might forget. You'll move on and then think, once you've cleaned your airbrush out, oh crikey, I haven't done that bit, I need to go back in and do it. So don't be frightened to go back in and touch in areas as you're moving the model around. Okay, so the last bit. Follow the pattern we've laid down. Wonky that. Block in the edge. You want to spray 90 degrees to the masking tape so you get a nice defined edge, and you try and avoid bleed underneath the tape. There we go. Again, mottling the panels. Now I'm going to go over these with a lightened colour, because I think these aircrafts would have weathered quite heavily, being Coastal Command, flying in those conditions. Salt air, bad weather, dirty airstrips, etc, etc. Yeah, these were working aircraft, and a lot of times they were stored out in the open. They weren't hangared, they were only hangared for maintenance. So you're going to get some bleaching, you're going to get rain streaks, you're going to get bird poops, you know, just general detritus will collect on these aircraft as they were standing on the aprons. And green is a colour that does fade quite heavily with the sun. Right, I think I'm quite happy with that. There we go. We have a base coated model. Excellent. So I'm going to call a video here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmask, and then we're going to look at mottling this paint, because it is quite blocky. although we did do a bit of mottling, certainly the dark earth is a very opaque colour, so it's blended away a lot of the pre-shading. So we're going to come and lighten the paint a little bit, do some centres of the panels, go back to the original colour, maybe even darken it a little bit, run it along some of the panel lines just to kind of give that worn finish. But overall I'm actually really quite happy with it. I'm really quite happy with the colour contrast between the colours, and I think it's starting to bring the model together. So until next time guys, happy modelling and stay safe.